This is a project I'm going to try and finish hopefully soon. This is an old enterprise grade style firewall. It's a tipping point 330. This was, I believe, originally made by Tipping Point. Then it was sold off to HP. And then I think it was sold off to Trend Micro. Console port, just like most network devices, switches, whatnot. A couple USB ports for, I don't know, firmware or whatever. Management port for your internet, Ethernet to manage the device. Let's do this. This is segment 1, 2, 3, and 4. Segment activity LEDs, status LED, power LED. Power obviously told you if it's on. Status would be like green if it's running, orange if it was like a fan failure or something like that. These just show you the ports are active, and here those have lane connectivity lights, more like most devices would. Basically, each segment would be this would be like a WAN. This would be the LAN. I think you could interchange them, but basically that was in, out, and then, or vice versa. Then it repeats. This was the inside of it. Originally, this under here, in this metal shroud, it had a, this little thing in it. It's a WD Western Digital Silicon drive. 1 gig PATA, PAL ATA, I think. It's a CF card, so compact flash interface, I believe. I'm not exactly sure how this works. What differentiates a 1 gig PAL ATA drive like this from, I think there's a difference. Might be just like an enterprise grade CF card. Maybe it's just more reads, writes, and things like that. It looks pretty much like a old CF compact flash from like a digital camera. The kind of interesting thing I found about this device, and they also had issues when I was trying to originally mess with pfSense on it. These guys are relays. Basically what those do, from what I understand, is all those are wired in with the Ethernet ports in the front. And I think what happens is if this thing had a failure, like power failure or some critical failure, these relays close and it basically fails open, or I'm not sure how you would say that, but basically if this thing failed, instead of disconnecting from the network, it would basically short out the logic and it would bypass directly from between the interfaces, and I guess basically allow all the traffic through and not filter anything. I don't know if that was configurable through the original OS or not. I would hope that would be, because if I was a CSO or something, I might want to do it the other way and just have their say if this thing failed. I don't want to be hacked or something like that. I don't know. Some of the newer ones might have had a high availability feature on it, but I don't know if this model did. I don't know much about some of these parts. A lot of it's just electronic parts. I'm assuming these are probably like the network card network interfaces. There's a few other things here. These could also be like a network interface. I would kind of guess from the number that these might be like network interfaces, and then these might be like a backbone switch type thing. A couple of cooling fans. This is probably like CMOS battery. This is probably like the North Bridge. It's pretty much like a computer, I think, there. That's probably like or maybe that's the south bridge. This could be the north bridge because by the processor in the RAM. This had 2 gig of RAM in it. I put a couple more 2 gig sticks in just because I had them laying around. In the back here, it's got a port for probably like a VJ header. It's also got a USB header and maybe a couple of fan ports. And then it has 2 fans in the back there. And I believe is under here is the main processor. Looks like voltage regulator here. ATI. I'm not exactly sure what this is. ATI is usually a GPU. It does, like I said, have VGA option on it, but there was no interface, so that could be either for that VGA or maybe it was also to drive the web interface or both. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know what exactly this part is. It says TPM, so I assume this is a security module of some sort for encryption or some stuff like that. Power supply for the processor. I believe a standard Molex supply connector, because it's usually the way I tell is 1, 2, 3, 4th wire in is green. That's usually a pretty good indicator. It has a, not sure what brand power supply. It appears to be 250 watt max. It's got its own fan in it. It's also got a little switch on the back along with the IEC connection. This I added in so I can load PFSense on it. Already had a Molex or SATA power connection. I added the SATA cable and it had 2 SATA ports on it. I was having issues with PFSense fitting on the 1 gig CF card, so this is an 80 gig Western Digital drive from an old computer or something. I'm kind of hoping to run PFSense on this at some point. I did have to flash the firmware with somebody in one of the forum I was looking at our PFSense community. Somehow was able to get the original BIOS for this thing and modify it so these relays would actually deactivate or whatever would need to be done to make that work right. And basically I would hope with PFSense I could use this like originally as intended. And I might also be able to do like NATing management. The other issue I ran into with PFSense was all that PFSense is Linux based, so some of these interfaces, I don't know what interface is what on here. I didn't really have a way to correlate that well what interface was what. So that was some trouble I had. You also got to have a set of management interface, so I usually tried to use that, but that's another area I ran into issues. Was with the management, because I had to set the IP address, but it's kind of hard to tell what interface is what on here and then map it to the OS. Maybe it'd be easy for somebody else, but I'm not that fluent with Linux to be able to figure that out, and it'd be easy if you could plug something into it and see if it was active, and then that would kind of give you an indication, then you can kind of label things. I also have a second one of these, but it's still got the original OS and stuff. I thought about messing with it, but I don't think it's worth bothering with. I'd be kind of curious if it's turned something like this into like a NAS box, but I don't know if it'd be worth it. You can only really put 1 hard drive in here from what I can see. There's not really enough space there to put a second one, even though you got power connection. I suppose you could put a laptop hard drive or a couple of those in here if you had them. But I think by the time you hack something like that together, I think in my case, I'd probably just use my Synology NAS and be done with it. It's kind of a cool device, but it's kind of also pretty customized to that particular job, which I guess in some ways does make sense. Usually security devices like this, that's going to be the top priority. And that's probably the same thing with an Ethernet switch or router. It's going to be ASICs and everything else specific to its particular job it would do. So you can't really reuse them for other things that easily. I don't know what I'll do with the other one yet. I might part it out or see if somebody else I know might want it and mess with it. Thing's pretty loud though too when you fire it up. I think it's mainly because all these fans here and in the back. Not quite sure why they set it up this way, if it was redundancy or what. Seems kind of weird you'd have two on the front and two in the back like that. Usually at least servers and stuff I see, it's like row in the front or row in the middle, that's pretty much it. Some occasions they'll be stacked together, but I'm not quite sure what they would try and do here. Maybe this one's just to cool this thing. This looks like a thermocouple or thermistor, so that might be recording temperature there. But it's heatsink, and I don't know, there might be another one in the processor or underneath that heatsink too. And I think that's pretty much it for this thing. It's kind of old. I believe it was made, I think it's on date, it's in 2014. This is DDR2 RAM. I don't know the exact speed, but it had 2 gig of RAM in it. I put 2 more in it, so now it's got 4 gig. I think that should be good for PF Sense. I think that's about everything I want to go over here. That's the back of it. 2 fans, some information, serial numbers, whatnot, power supply. And it's kind of nice it does have a switch, because sometimes these things do crash and you just gotta reboot them, and that's an easy way to do it.